Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the Sober Witch Life podcast. I'm your hostess. I, I'm I'm me. I'm Sunshine, the pink-haired sober witch, and I'm by myself today. I haven't been by myself on a podcast in I don't even think maybe a month and a half. Maybe I think I've had a guest almost every week, and hopefully we'll have some more. I know I've had handfuls of folks that have reached out, but if I don't have a guest, you just get me. And I think that's pretty cool. So uh, it is. I'm recording this on June 22nd, which is literally the day after the summer solstice. The prime time, I think, was at like 1:29 or 1:32 or something like that in the morning on Sunday. So between basically Saturday night and Sunday. And so I celebrated, I guess you could say I celebrated all weekend long. But we had, a ritual of joy and gathering on Saturday. And then yesterday, since it was Father's Day, spent the day celebrating my partner because he's the most amazing dad that I know. But I digress. I want to talk to you all about the summer solstice. Um, and I've been thinking a lot about this. I wrote the email to the coven this morning, and that's kind of what prompted this. And I've been thinking about it for the last number of days as I was preparing for ritual and kind of just excited for the start of this season, right? And I was thinking about how summer to me has always felt like pure joy, just like an incredibly lovely and wonderful and kind of like awe-inspiring season. And I'm talking about what it feels like to take your shoes off for the first time, like when the season begins to change. And if you live in that beautiful weather that's like year round, like in California, you might not know exactly what we mean. Those of us that are in the north have a little bit of a different experience. But the first time you get to take your shoes off and you start wearing sandals, and then the first time you take your sandals off and you can feel your like bare feet in the grass. I'm talking about the joy that comes when you just, as a kid maybe got on your bike and just rode with nowhere specific in mind. Or me, also, I have all of these memories of myself and my next door neighbor. Everybody else had to go home, but we lived next door to each other. So it'd be like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and we'd be sitting out front on the porch with a big old glass of Coca-Cola and a big bowl of popcorn, right? And it's like you had the whole day ahead of you every morning when you woke up, right? I think about what it was like, for 13 years. I mean, yeah, pretty much 13 years, waiting for school to let out every year. And even though I got out a week usually earlier than the public schools or some of the other schools that my friends went to, by the time the summer solstice hit, everyone was out and it was official. Like it was officially the start of summer, right? And the whole world just seemed possible at that point. I didn't have to wake up at any specific time, so I would sleep. I mean, when I was a lot younger, I would sleep until like maybe 8 o'clock, and then I'd go call one of my friends that lived a couple of doors down to see if she could play. But as I got into my like preteens and teens, I could sleep until 10, 11, 1 o'clock because I was a latchkey kid. I was usually home alone in the summer, me and my brother. I could just go, and even when we had a babysitter, I could leave out of the house whenever I wanted and didn't have to be back until my dad got home from work, right? And when there was no babysitter, a lot of the days I'd have people over and we'd turn my dad's radio up and we had so much fun as kids. And as I look back and as I was writing this, I was thinking a lot about the summer throughout my lifetime. And there are all these beautiful thresholds, right? You graduate from grade school, you graduate from high school, you graduate from college all in the spring, right? I left my marriage. I finally found the courage to step away from my abusive ex-husband at this time of the year, right? I met my now partner during this time of the year, right? I started 2 years ago, started venturing down this path of the sober witch life movement during this time of the year. Summer has just always had this way of showing up for me when I was ready to stop just surviving and I really wanted something beautiful and new, right? And I know as witches, a lot of times when we think about magic or doing our magic, we often lean into the moon cycles, right? And I love moon magic. I don't even know how many new moon rituals, full moon rituals, like paid attention to the waxing and the waning of the moon to see like what might I be best served in doing. Should I wait a few days before it shifts, right? And there's a lot of medicine in that. 28 days I think is a really, really phenomenal time to kind of allow some energetic to start showing itself, right? And it can help us start to see our patterns. When we look back 28 days, we could say, have I witnessed this, right? Am I seeing the same pattern? Does it need to shift? Does it need to change? And for, gosh, I don't even know, a couple of years, every full moon, I would have this like pretty grand, like gratitude ritual that I did, right? So don't get me wrong, like I love me some moon magic, but there is so much depth in the magic that is associated with the wheel of the year. I truly believe that when we start aligning our magic to the wheel of the year, it has the potential to become so much more transformational. The moon gives us kind of like the right here and the right now. And I think it's beautiful for the things that are like, I need a new job. I need to forgive myself for X. I need to release my connection to this person, right? Really lovely for that. But when we are talking about full-fledged personal transformation, the wheel of the year is really what can help, right? It teaches us that transformation, like big, bold transformation, is not quick and obvious and immediate. These deeply rooted changes are the ones that we can often only recognize when we are looking back at a season. When we say, what was I like last summer? Right? And I remember this time last summer, I had spent last year the beginning of last year, planting a lot of seeds around shifting and changing for the last time what I would consider my relationship with food. Right? I really wanted food to be something that was nurturing me and balancing me. And then I moved right into a deep intensive study for 6 months around that. And I looking back now can say like I have probably fed my body better in the last 12 months than I ever had in my entire life. Right? And I couldn't have said that in 28 days. I really couldn't have. This is also one of the truths that recovery has taught me. Yes, I can celebrate 28 days sober. I can celebrate 28 days without picking up a drink. I can celebrate, what would we go? 56 days, like, right? The 3 months. We can feel some of the shifts in our behaviors and the way that we feel and see ourselves. But these big changes that are altering the course of our life, they're slower. I think back to when any change, whether it was like leaving my corporate job, took months, probably took almost 2 years. Stepping out in an abusive marriage took, at least 12 months, if not even more than that. Letting go of a relationship that I know that was so incredibly toxic for me took me 1.5 years, right? This is why the Wheel of the Year is so potent. Each and every one of these holidays teaches us something. When you look at the entire cycle, you can see that you have birth and death and desire and growth and harvesting and, descent and renewal. You have all of these bits and pieces. So we're not being asked to become something new in 28 days, but we are being asked to walk along the patterns of the earth through a long and slow, honest process of becoming whatever it is that we choose to become. And so here we are, a day after the summer solstice, still ripe in that energetic. It's this place between all of the fertile holidays, right? In between all of those fertile holidays and all of the harvest holidays that are about to come, right? We had Imbolc, we had Elstera, we had Beltane, right? And now Litha, in and of itself, the summer solstice, has arrived with its radiance, with its beautiful golden light. I mean, look at this sun shining. I know if you're listening to the podcast, but like literally on the video, you can see the sun shining into the window, right? And it is this, it's pleasure and joy and life force. The sun asks us to look at what is alive, what is growing, and what still is waiting to bloom. I asked myself this morning, what does it sound like? What does that energy of the solstice sound like? And I heard this like incredible brass band, right? If you've ever been in the heart of New Orleans and have heard a brass band live, like this is what I heard. I heard the angels ringing out their trumpets. I heard a room full of children laughing. And when I asked what it felt like when your sides begin to hurt because you cannot stop laughing, right? Or like your sides hurt, your stomach hurts, and you're like, please stop. I can't take any more, right? It felt like, have you ever been really, really hot? Like it's the peak of summer. It's like a 95, maybe 110 degree day, depending upon where you're at. And you jump into a lake or a pool that is just incredibly cool, like perfectly cool and chilling. Or if you're like me and you love roller coasters, that point where you get all the way tick, 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 tick to the top, and you're sitting there and it pauses, right? And then whoosh, everything drops. Right? And the other thing that I thought about what the summer solstice feels like is it feels like when you're kissing somebody new, but it's not the first kiss. It's not that kiss that's filled with all sorts of anxiety and anticipation, like, oh my gosh, right? It's like the 10th or the 20th, where you're still so excited and enamored, right? But there's comfort there, there's warmth. And you love kissing them, and they love kissing you. And nobody's trying to prove anything. You're just there in the moment, completely, fully receiving it, and just like drowning in it. That's the energy of summer. It's a joy that doesn't need justification. It's pleasure without ever having to apologize. And it's the kind of aliveness that reminds me I'm not only here to heal from the hard things, from all that trauma, all that pain, all of that addiction, but I'm here to experience the beauty of life, the sweetness of life, laughter and wonder, and just all of the delight that being in recovery has made space for. And I can feel that. And I do. I feel it all of the time. I sat here and I thought, and what came to mind was our trip to Maine last summer. We took a road trip and we went through Montreal. We went through Toronto and Montreal, and seeing Montreal for the first time, and then through Maine, and hung out on the coast, and then drove all the way back after this retreat through New York, and just all of these amazing memories. Or even the trip down to Miami with my partner, where we rode some little scooters, or Vespas, in essence, through the city of Miami. And I feel it almost every single morning when I walk into that garden and I get to see something new. And I get to see the caterpillars on the dill. When I get to see the new tomatoes having popped. When I get to find a strawberry in the patch. Right? These little signs that life is always happening, whether I'm micromanaging it or not. It's like, it's this beautiful divine wonder. And it reminds me that growth is real, even if we cannot see it happening, right? Even if we don't have this like undeniable proof, we're still always growing. And that to me is one of the greatest teachings of this season. There's so much becoming that happens before anything even blooms. Right now, I grow a lot from seed, and so it starts from bare dirt. And now out there, I've got some cosmos that are popping up and zinnias that are popping up, and there's no flowers. I've got some nicotana. I've got some, marigolds, no flowers, but they are still growing. They are still becoming something, even though they've not yet bloomed. I was talking with a friend this past week, and we were talking about the solstice, and they said, I always have such a hard time remembering them. And they said, I think it's because I grew up in California, and we never really had any of these drastic seasons. And I think that can be true, right? Which is, I appreciate, I appreciate witnessing the changing so much, especially as a witch. Because I don't know if summer would be so spectacular for me if I had never known or experienced winter, right? Like, if I had never experienced pain or suffering or hardship, I don't know if joy would feel as spectacular and good. When I think about the season of winter and how it might show up, I think about leaving my abusive job, which happened to be in the dead of winter. I think about asking my I call my addict in crime to leave. And that was in winter. And like, I didn't have any plans, not neither of these things. I didn't have any like grandiose ideas of how anything else. I just knew something needed to change. I knew that with winter, as to where it was, it became quiet enough that I could recognize what in my life needed to shift, what needed to change, what was no longer serving me. Right? I didn't have all the answers of what was going to happen in any of these situations. And that's kind of what winter is. It's not like a punishment, right? It's this time and space where we can really see the truth. It's where illusions begin to break. It's where we can stop pretending that something is sustainable just because you've managed to survive it for a long time. And I think that's why the holiday season during winter even becomes so drastic for a lot of people, is because you've been able to, avoid maybe family throughout the entire year for an extended period of time. But yet now this season comes about and there's so many obligations and so many things that we must do and have to do and so on and so forth. And it just comes to a head, right? And sometimes what has to change has to be drastic. For a really long time, I used to think that recovery began when I stopped drinking. And when I say for a long time, I mean probably almost 6 years. I would talk about being in recovery after the point that I stopped drinking. And I think it makes sense, right? You have a sober date and you start counting the years and the times and the days, and people will celebrate these milestones with you because you got sober, right? And this matters. It's like a really big deal. Um, I think it's huge to celebrate the days that we let something go, that, like, if we were drinking or drugging or like literally engaging in active self-abuse, right? But this past October, as I was in reflection, and I may have talked about this before, but I was in reflection and I had realized that my recovery didn't just begin when I got sober. My recovery began when I exited my abusive marriage in 2015. Recovery was not just letting go of the alcohol. It was about releasing everything that had robbed me of joy, robbed me of pleasure, robbed me of like being soft and sweet and sensitive, robbed me of like experiencing love for what it really was, robbed me of being comfortable telling the truth. Leaving that marriage was the first step into recovery for me. I began to gather with witches again. I began to study tarot. I began to celebrate the wheel of the year at that particular time. I would gather with some of my girlfriends and we would celebrate and we would enjoy it. And, I don't have a written record of it, but it happened. I did. I started to become more of the witch that I'd always wanted to be. I wasn't living my magic on a day-to-day basis in the same way I would when I stepped into recovery from alcohol, but I was beginning to. I was shifting and I was listening, and it was the wheel of the year that began to lead me home from that point. This is why I believe that the summer solstice is such a powerful moment for those of us that are in recovery. And I don't mean this as like some kind of like cute seasonal metaphor, right? Recovery is work. And we have to plant seeds all of the time. And many of them are not dramatic enough for other people to notice, like stopping drinking, leaving an abusive marriage, right? The reality is we start to plant seeds when we tell the truth, when we set a boundary, when we ask for help, when we make an appointment, when we decide to go to circle, when we pick up our journal, when we light a candle, or decide that we are just worthy of a life that feels better than the one we've been doing to just survive. But those seeds need nourishment and they need attention. They need the warmth of the sun, so to speak. They need joy, right? They need moments where we're not only focused on what we're trying to heal from, but what we're healing towards. Because if all we ever do is stare at the wound, we can forget that healing is supposed to make room for life. And that's what the summer solstice reminds me of. Recovery is not just about surviving the dark. It's about learning how to receive the light. And this year, I planted a whole bunch of seeds between Imbolc, Ostera, and Beltane. Almost every single one of these seeds was around the nonprofit, around the work that I'm doing to be here in service to witches in recovery. I wanted to plant the seeds of this movement in every way, shape, or form that I could. I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to teach it. I wanted to build it. I wanted to share it. I wanted to let all of the people that needed to know about it know that it exists. And I can honestly say I look back and it happened. Since the beginning of the year, I've probably been on close to 20 different podcasts. I've continued doing the Sober Witch Life podcast itself. We've had community offerings. We've had Circle every Monday and Friday. We've completed, as the Coven, 90 days of shadow work, the alchemy of desire. We've moved into these 30-day challenges now. And the Coven, as I mentioned, in and of itself, grown to 114 members. And a year ago, I knew I wanted this work to grow, but I had no idea that it was going to blossom into what it has. I didn't know that we'd have these partnerships. I didn't know that people would express how ecstatic they were that they found it. I didn't know how well we'd be supported by a lot of folks in the community, both the recovery community and the witchcraft community. And yes, I also didn't know the places where it would not be received, because that's a part of growth, right? Not every seed blossoms. Not every person understands what you're trying to build, just like not every field is fertile enough. But when something is meant to grow, it will find the light. One of the things that I want each and every one of you to understand is that joy in recovery is not only possible, it's kind of the point. We don't step into recovery only to stop doing what was harming us. We step into recovery because we want to live a life worth living. We want peace and love and happiness and joy and hope. We want to wake up and feel like there's something beautiful waiting for us, even if it's an ordinary day. We want to become people who can experience beauty without needing to numb, escape, control, or sabotage it. Joy is rebellion in that way. It's a rebellion against all of the bullshit that tried to keep us down. It's rebellion against every system, every relationship, every addiction, every trauma, every wound, and every lie that tried to shape us into something we were never meant to be. Joy is proof we are healing. It's proof that we're growing. It's proof that we're finding beauty in every breath we get to take. And I know that can be hard, especially if you're newer in recovery. Sometimes joy feels really uncomfortable when you've pretty much known chaos. And peace feels really suspicious. And being soft feels unsafe. And pleasure feels like something that you've got to work hard to receive. And I think this is why we really need community that knows us, that understands how much joy there can be in tiptoeing through the garden and talking to the fairies, or understands how much happiness just sauntering through the woods and trying to find the gnomes can bring, or the kind that understands that dancing in the rain is like dancing with your inner child, the kind that doesn't roll its eyes when you say you were speaking to the trees, but instead asks, what did they say in response? And I know the summer solstice officially is past, as in like it was yesterday. And maybe you were busy, or you were working, or you were overwhelmed, or tired, or just not in the mood, or didn't have the supplies, but you haven't missed it. We are here right now in the throes of summer. Between now and the first harvest, which is the beginning of August, you have weeks to celebrate, to feel joy, to fertilize and to nurture all of the seeds that you've planted, everything that you wanted to grow. You don't need to be perfect. There's no such thing as the perfect jar, or the perfect candle, or the perfect altar cloth, or the perfect timing. All you need is the willingness to step into the light, step into the sun, stand outside, put your hands on your heart, speak your desire out loud, laugh on purpose, walk through your garden, walk through your friend's garden, walk through a neighbor's garden, right? If they let you. Dance in the rain, make lemonade, sit on the porch, kiss someone you love. Let the sun warm your skin. Let yourself feel joy without needing to earn it. The reality is, my friends, we are all spiritual beings, and living and celebrating life is a spiritual practice. And your presence can be the spell. The season will always show you how to celebrate it if you're willing to listen. Ask yourself what in you is ready to receive more light, and then let yourself hear the answer. Happy solstice, my dear sweet friends. I hope that the gods and the goddesses shower you with more joy than you could ever handle. Until next time, much love from me to all of you.